There we go. We are live and direct from
places
around the western hemispherish area of America.
We're off to a rousing start.
I know. Yeah, great. Shall we do that over again? No. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Film Geek Primer. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Film Geek Primer episode.
We're just lucky we don't have an audience.
9. Yeah, I know. We're very lucky we don't have an audience. I'm your host.
As many of these as there are Hellraisers. That's awesome.
I'm your host, John Santo. The Hellraiser thing we'll discuss not tonight, but on a later date. So you'll learn.
That's
about
a nice tease.
Weird private joke, yeah. And so really quickly, Shu, you get 15 seconds to play our theme song, and go.
I need a countdown.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Wow, I actually kind of like the countdown thing. That's pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty good.
It adds an extra layer of tension.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yeah, see if you can actually
think of how good that would be if there was a bomb. Like if there were sticks of dynamite with a timer counting down for that.
Actually, I like attached to the kazoo.
Right. Nothing happens at the end. That's just our dramatic timer. It's a very dramatic timer.
It's like speed on a kazoo. If he stops playing, he blows up.
Everybody, I think, would rather I just blow up.
And that's,
hold on a second. I got to write a spec script.
Okay. I was going to say, yeah, that's already been sold. That's what we get for broadcasting live. So bags of money have now been handed over to Jan de Bont. So speaking of Jan de Bont, nothing to say. Moving on. Let's introduce our lovely panel. As always, we've got with us Dub. Dub, how are you doing this fine evening?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. The lovely Jan de Bont could not join us this evening.
That's because
he's off doing. I'm kidding. No one knows what he's doing.
No, he's too busy working the soup kitchen right now. So we're proud of him now. Anyways, so with
one member, cut to Jan de Bont, single tear.
Single tear crying.
I did nothing to deserve that, but entertain you.
No, actually, no.
And too.
Yeah, we throw the haunting in his face real quick. Joining us also is the lovely Audrey Hepburn and her date this evening, Shu.
Well, you know, Audrey hasn't been in the movies for a while, so she's not exactly A-listing anymore.
Hasn't she done a car commercial?
Yeah, well, perhaps I'm driving that car. And
I think she was is she one of the ones in the Charlize Theron perfume commercial that has like Marilyn Monroe and other people like that in it? Does anybody remember?
Yeah, no, her black and white image has been used.
Yeah.
Audrey, is that you? Is that you? Talk to me. Talk to me. Talk to me.
All right. And
was Audrey Hepburn used in that?
Yes, she was.
In the late '90s, when Robert Zemeckis was using the image of dead celebrities, there was like HBO shorts he did.
Wow, I don't remember those at all.
Well, John Wayne was in one of them.
Don't wear plaid.
There was one that took scenes from Dark Passage where he looks into the mirror to make you be Humphrey Bogart for like a half-hour episode. Like this is not familiar? They were like Twilight Zone episodes.
Right. I remember them vaguely. Yes, Dub. You're not alone on this island.
But it was this horrific like stealing of dead celebrities' image.
Are you talking about Amazing Stories?
Yeah, was it Amazing Stories? I think it was on HBO.
Well, that was on HBO, wasn't it?
Yeah, so that
Stories was ABC.
Yeah, that wasn't.
Thing.
I don't know. I would have to say maybe it was.
All right, I'm digging into IMDb.
Yeah,
one more person to introduce.
Look that sucker up, and of course, finally, Warren from the famed Graph Lounge in Northern California.
You guys haven't said anything about my headphones.
Yeah, what happened to the air traffic control set? What's going on there?
You would be surprised how poorly large sets of headphones travel in a small computer bag.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
So
actually, they were broken the whole time. They were just held together with Scotch tape that you guys couldn't see.
Nice.
I'm serious. They were.
Nice.
That's the magic. That's the artistry.
So did the Scotch take their tape back?
It was several layers of Scotch tape. It would break and like it would work, and then I'd go, yeah, it's sturdy. Then it would break, and then I'd work it again. And then eventually I ran out of Scotch tape.
Go back to the item covered in Scotch tape to which you said, "Yay, it's sturdy."
My headset.
I believe your criteria for sturdy are questionable.
No, it was very questionable. But if it went from like 2 pieces to 1 piece that you kind of didn't wiggle very much, then it's sturdy.
So if there's one thing that everybody should be happy about tonight, it's the fact that you never decided to become an engineer.
Right.
Oh no, I'm an engineer.
He probably engineered at the radio stations where I worked.
You know the New Bay Bridge? That's my design.
I was wondering
the number of radio stations where I
I was wondering where that lovely Scotch tape angle came from on the bridge. So.
I designed airplanes. You know that Malaysia flight? Too soon.
Too soon.
That's okay. They haven't found him yet, so there's no proof.
Yeah, this is true.
It still could be funny. It still could be funny.
Yeah, it's only sad if they prove that they're dead.
Until that, right?
We're living in a Heisenberg humor scenario.
Exactly.
Where the joke is neither funny nor tasteless.
Yeah, exactly.
We're awaiting further information.
Wow, this is like the true physics of comedy.
Oh,
I'm glad we recorded that because I like that.
Yeah, that's solid. That's very solid. Okay, let's get into what we're supposed to be getting into tonight, which is the life and career of a John Milius. I feel kind of weird because next week we're supposed to be doing Sam Peckinpah, which means we're doing 2 director weeks in a row. But shit happens.
Wait. Wasn't next week
or Friedkin?
Friedkin, yeah. Thank you.
Sorry. What did I say? Peckinpah?
Yeah, I know what you did there, and we'll talk about it next week.
Yeah, we can talk about that next week. And actually, I did share with Shu my excitement from who we got to witness at the Sorcerer screening.
Well, I think we kind of have to say it now for no other reason to tell Warren, but I can honestly say I've never seen you so excited.
Yeah, I know, it was weird, wasn't it? Like I audibly
gasped like a little French girl.
I did. I completely. I was like a little boy.
You did. You're just your fingers clapping.
Yeah.
And I think your knees were going back and forth.
Yeah, and the guy next to me looked like I belonged on a special bus. So just to recap really quick, Dub and I got to go to the TCM Film Festival, which took place this past weekend, which is fantastic. At the Chinese Theater, we got to see the restoration of William Friedkin's Sorcerer. And Friedkin is there, and he's giving his speech, and he invites up. This was the odd little bit about the whole thing, was that he invites up 3 people who worked on the reconstruction of the film. He's like, I'm really happy they're here tonight, and I'm thinking, oh, maybe they're going to bring up, not Roy Scheider, but
that would be so gross. And I thought that so often. Every time he started introducing someone, I'm like, oh, fuck, he's not going to say Roy Scheider, is he? Because then I'm going to giggle thinking about the corpse of Roy Scheider.
Just being wheeled up.
So tasty. Don't even go there.
Yeah, it was that moment where you're like, okay, we get it. He's lost his marbles. But so he ends up inviting.
Is he out there?
Is he out there? Yeah, that's exactly.
And they have to take him away.
Just gonna wheel him out. So he invited up like the sound guy, the producer, and the
color timer. He did the color timer,
right?
And the sound mixer.
And
the sound mixer was drunk.
Right. Yeah. Oh, sound mixer was plastic.
He was a good guy. That was nice. He was very excited to be there.
But then Friedkin does this whole thing. He says, one other person I want to bring up is the man. Every word you see on this screen was written by him. And I, in total silence, all of a sudden I just go, oh my god. and Aaron is looking at me like, oh god, Aaron.
I may be half joking about the finger clapping thing. I just did that because the camera can catch that.
Yeah,
but no. I do honestly believe your knees started shaking back and forth.
I was in awe. So because Aaron looks at me, he's like, what? And I'm like, dude, it's Waylon Green. He wrote The Wild Bunch. And like as soon as I say that, William Friedkin's like, he's written many films. The one, of course, you will all recognize is The Wild Bunch.
And you're like, yee!
Oh my god! I just needed like a little schoolgirl outfit, and I would have just gone running up with my lunchbox.
I got you one. I got you.
Really an ironic reaction to one of the most manly movies ever made.
Complete. Yeah, it was the pussification of that. Oh my lord. So, anyways.
Well, next to that movie, we're all pretty much pussies.
This is true. Yeah. Next to Warren Oates, none of us have a penis.
Right. Right. We might as well be women.
Yeah. So so Waylon Green, who is 77, I had to look him up because I mentioned that Shu was there, and she was like, he's still alive. And so so Waylon Green went up there, and it was this cool, crazy moment where I got to see William Friedkin and Waylon Green standing next to each other, and that made my day. And then it was like I looked around because he was in he was in like a white, cream-colored suit, very obvious. And I was looking around for him after the thing, and I just could not find him at all, which was really a bummer because Waylon Green not only wrote The Wild Bunch, he also wrote the Brink's Job for Friedkin as well, which is a meh film. But he wrote The Border with Jack Nicholson from 1981, which is a movie that Shu and I saw a long time ago together. And filming it, I remember liking it quite a bit. I mean, I felt like it was a movie that was kind of out of time. It was probably past that era.
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty accurate. There was that weird era, and you can go back and look at some of the movies from the real early 80s, probably maybe up to as late as 83, where they feel like they should have been made from 74 to 77.
Yeah.
And there's that real weird transitional period where some of the lower budget kind of independent character-driven stuff has that sort of an older look to it than you'd think based on our simplistic mental approach of how film is segmented into decades. Movies from the 60s look relatively, movies from the 70s look relatively the same, movies from the 80s look relatively the same, and of course there's a little, it's not as clear-cut and dry as that, and The Border fits into that category. It's very much a 70s, mid-70s, I'd say, looking film that happened to be made in 1981, and, probably to a large degree, that and the subject matter, which I think is very limited as well, probably has a lot to do with the reason that it's not necessarily a film that you think of all that much. But my recollection, like yours, John, I believe, is that it's pretty darn solid.
Yeah, and I think I remember the story and the script being much better than the execution of it. I know Peckinpah was they were trying to get Peckinpah to direct it. By that point, he was deep into the heart attacks and cocaine, so that wasn't happening.
A lot of those going on.
Yeah, he had during that era, that was pretty much what he was known mostly for, was being irritating and high.
As well, he was always irritating.
Yeah,
and it was a different kind of high. This is the point near the end, but you look at the movie and you can understand why he would be an individual who would probably be at the top of somebody's list. He'd probably be the first name you'd go to try to direct a film like this.
Yeah,
and it got made.
Yeah, and I think probably the only reason why anybody I don't even think it's like in if you look at Nicholson's top movies, my guess is nobody ever even brings that one up. It's also got Harvey Keitel in it. Is it Valerie Perrine played like the wife or something like that? There's somebody, or like a weird Bernadette Peters, somebody.
Yeah, I don't think it's Perrine. I think you're thinking of Thief.
It's Valerie Perrine.
Okay. John Santo always knows who he's thinking of.
Also with some manly Warren Oates.
That's right. Yeah, it's got the oats in it. Yeah.
We've got a Warren Oates through line. Let's see if we can keep this up. That's two.
And that might be a part of it. Well, the topic of the night will certainly help us in that regard.
Definitely so. Yeah.
When you're talking about anything related to Warren Oates too, as intertwined and symbiotic as he and Peckinpah were, it's easy to say Warren Oates, Sam Peckinpah. So that would be another reason why you'd remember this film and understand why perhaps that would be the director that they'd look at.
And on the non-subject of remakes, actually one of the things I was thinking of is that's actually a script in a film that could easily be remade, especially now.
I think that's a very good point.
And that's one of those things because they're always trying to bring in the big titles that everybody remembers and stuff like that, where they really should be finding kind of these smaller gems that maybe didn't work properly, but you could see a lot of promise there. The Border is definitely one of those that had a lot more promise than the film itself.
I don't think movies get rebooted because they want to polish the art.
No, no, they don't. No, they don't at all. But I think which is kind of a shame because I think they would be able to find a lot better material other than just saying quick. Everybody remembers the name Labyrinth, so let's.
Sometimes they do though. Sometimes they do.
They tried it with Straw Dog.
Yes.
Straw Dogs was a weird one to pluck out of obscurity and remake.
What?
Straw Dogs.
Straw Dogs.
Oh, yeah. They also did Attack on Precinct 13.
Yeah.
Right.
which I went and saw the original. I was like, oh my god, they made this like on $5. Like,
Yeah.
it's like
Right.
the cheapest movie ever made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Pelham 1, 2, 3 they remade recently
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those all
And
fall probably into that category. The Border's an interesting idea, though, and I think at the
No, because you don't see The Border on cable. You saw all those movies sort of on cable.
but I think but that doesn't necessarily preclude it from being available,
Right.
to do again. I think what Santo's getting to is it's more a subject matter element, and a lot of the subject matter that was in place then, I think, could easily been translated with all the immigrant and border discussion that's taking place now. Shame we aren't talking to El Tremendo about this.
Yeah. Oh, Tremendo. That's okay. He's making a run for the border right now as we speak.
Well, he's got a championship match.
Yeah. Right. He's actually out he's out at Lucha Libre 63 tonight. So let's see. Let's do a poor segue into our main topic tonight. Recently, we discovered that. Actually, about a year ago, a trailer was released for a documentary called Milius, about the life and times of John Milius. Now, John Milius is a name that very few people know, but at the same time, almost everyone knows his work in one way or another. The man has had his fingerprints all over such classic films as Apocalypse Now. I don't know if you call it a classic, but it is a very popular, I guess, cult movie. Red Dawn, the very original, the first Conan the Barbarian movie.
Red Dawn was remade.
Red Dawn was remade, and I think that's one of the branding ones, I believe. But he also is responsible for scripts such as the Dirty Harry movies. Actually, several of them he's gone and rewritten them. Something we learned through the documentary was his doctoring on The Hunt for Red October. He would actually go in apparently and write many speeches for Sean Connery in several of his films, and
that was a fascinating scene in the documentary.
That was one of those things I did not learn about. So anyway, it is streaming now on Netflix. It was released originally on Epix, picked it up as its exclusive, I guess in hopes originally of getting people to sign up for Epix. Bet that didn't work. But it got me to sign up for the 1 week free, where I watched the documentary 3 times just to kind of absorb as much as possible. And then Tremendo Facebooked us saying, "Hey, got to see this right away," and I was like, "Oh shit!" At which point we discovered that it was streaming on Netflix. So, Shu, you watched the whole thing. Aaron, you got about halfway through it. Warren, did you get a chance to watch it?
I did not.
Did not? Okay, so
but I do want to see it, and I did want to see it because it's like there's not a whole lot of stuff that I want to see streaming on Netflix.
Yeah.
that was one of those things.
Yeah, Netflix is kind of a black hole in weird ways.
You should follow that post that El Tremendo sent, because it talked about a lot of new stuff that was on there, and I mean.
Well, they have websites. There's websites that you can find that'll always keep you up to date, like what's buried in Netflix.
Sure.
But sometimes I heard that Netflix was shutting them down because they used some sort of algorithm that was digging into Netflix proprietary stuff or whatever.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I know InstantWatcher.com is the one I go to, and that always puts up what they are, what is coming up. The one thing Netflix does not allow out anymore is the information on what's closing soon, what's coming up and going off soon, which is a real bummer because that's one of those things where I have stuff sitting in my instant queue I've had stuff sitting in my instant queue since the day it went up that I haven't watched yet because it's continued to stream. And if all of a sudden it popped up like, hey, this is leaving in a week, that would prioritize right up to the top, and I would check that out. Yeah, and so I feel like they're kind of losing out to some extent on revenue by not pointing out things that I would actually I would check out if I knew it was going away. So back to John Milius. Dub, let's actually I'll tell you what, Warren, let's start with you since you haven't seen it yet. The films of John Milius, which ones of his kind of pop up in your head, or which ones are very specific do you feel to you, or that you kind of grew up watching?
Apocalypse Now. I didn't grow up watching it. I watched that later. Like, I wasn't like a little kid, like, oh, Apocalypse Now. It was like the same with Conan the Barbarian. Actually, I saw that one really young.
Yeah, that was we were like 10 when that one came out.
For some reason, that was like okay to watch.
Yeah.
And I don't.
Where did you see that first, Warren?
And not in the theater. like video somewhere, or maybe we had HBO or whatever cable channel that we had.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't
Yeah,
HBO.
HBO is where I first remember seeing it.
Yeah, it was something like that, and it was just like, whoa, it was kind of mind blowing.
Yeah.
And then I guess when I think about him these days, I can't help but think about John Goodman in The Big Lebowski.
Right.
Because
I'm 42 minutes into the documentary, and all I see is I'm waiting for him to be like, Walter out. Just am I the only one who gives a fuck about the rule? Just do a whole
exactly
thing.
So, that's like, I can't picture him anymore without picturing John Goodman.
Yeah, and they actually, it's funny because they don't really touch on that in the documentary, except at the very, very end during the closing credits. Yeah, they've got the only soundbite from John Goodman saying, "If I never met the man, but I'd be afraid to," or something like that.
Basically, the gist of it was he had no connection to it at all.
Oh yeah,
that whatever Goodman channeled for that character, at least the way that Goodman presents it, had nothing to do with Milius whatsoever. I think their design was, like you guys saw, and they probably did as well. This is clearly a caricature of John Milius, and so if we can get Goodman to talk about it, maybe he'll provide some insight. They interview Goodman. Goodman says one thing that doesn't fit. It can't fit into the movie. They throw it into the credits.
Yeah. But it's a shame because Milius's kids are interviewed, and both of them are sitting together, and they're talking about when they saw the Lebowski, and they look at each other like, "Holy shit, that's Dad." So Warren, you and I are the same age. So what you saw? I'm guessing. Did you see Red Dawn in the theater? Was that one of? Was that?
I might have seen Red Dawn in the theater.
Because I ended up seeing that like a ton of times when it came out on video.
Yeah, it was very popular on video at the time because it was sort of like the Goonies with AK-47s in kind of a way, It was like, only it was just darker and sadder. There was a lot of really sad things that were like upsetting, and but yeah, that was one of those movies that like drove you through the 80s.
It was a sad, dark, upsetting Goonies.
It was. Exactly, it was, without the truffle shuffle. Oh, no, wait, I forgot. There was a truffle shuffle. I forgot. My bad.
It was horrible.
It was a horrible truffle shuffle. Oh, C. Thomas Howell.
So, Dub, in Film Geek Primer, back in the old days, we did a Conan the Barbarian episode.
Yeah.
And you don't like Conan the Barbarian.
I am not.
Has it changed? I feel like your opinion has changed slightly, not because of doing that episode, but I feel like in light of what's the phrase, like it now in a Game of Thrones era where it's not all about giant wars and things like that. That Conan Barbarian has a little bit more relevance, I guess, or a little more grounded feel to it. That kind of originated that fantasy set with a realistic tone, I guess.
Well. Santo, it's funny you bring that up.
Here it comes.
In the process of doing that particular episode, and just to be clear, I stand by the episode. I feel like it's a solid representation of our lives at the time.
Yeah, oh yeah, totally.
But in the process of researching for that episode, I actually did gain a little bit more respect for the film. And having taken a contrary position, I have been more open-minded when I see it, to be like, okay, maybe I've missed something here, and it has been more enjoyable when I've caught it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's been more enjoyable because I'm finally coming around, or I'm not being an idiot, or if I understood it more having studied it a bit. I can appreciate it better. It's weird, but that's the honest truth.
No, I'll give you that. I will give you that. Sometimes it takes time to understand that other people are right. And you
Well, no, it's like when we were doing that, I always liked The Thing, but when we were almost doing that thing about John Carpenter, and I got really into The Thing, I really enjoy that movie now.
Yeah.
The Thing's amazing.
He was Warren, you need to learn something about your brother. So he hadn't seen The Thing. We were working together at
I have no brother.
A certain place. We were working together at a certain gossip site. And he had not seen The Thing, and then I believe that was the first time you watched it soon after that, or while we were there, and you came into work, and you said, and you didn't like it. I believe you didn't like it the first time you saw it.
No, what you're recalling is that the first time I saw it, when it was in the theater, when it first came out on video. I don't think I saw it in the theater. It was in video. By the way, we've strayed far from Milius, and I'll just finish this story, and then we'll steer back.
Yeah.
When I first saw it, I was not that impressed with it, and I thought the effects were stupid. But that was at a time in my life where I was judging a film entirely by the effectiveness of its special effects.
Right, okay.
So I didn't like the rubber monsters.
Right.
But this was made in 1981.
Yeah.
80, 81?
Yeah, I saw it back in the day, but it was no Pumpkinhead.
Okay, we're going to stop there with that story. Thank you very much.
Can we edit that out?
Yeah, really.
You're all on record as having listened to that.
Be fortunate that nobody's watching this.
But I want to point out the thing about the thing that I really like is that even with the bad effects, that movie could have been a play. It was really about their interaction with the characters. And there's another horror movie that I think is just like that, is The Mist, which I don't hear enough about, which is, to me, terrifying movie. That really didn't need any of the monsters in it. Like, the monsters ruined it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's kind of how I felt about The Thing the first time, is that the monster ruined it for me. It's the interplay between the people. And having viewed it second, third, fourth, and fifth times in the very recent past, I can tell you it's a phenomenal film on just about every level, except, of course, some dated effects.
Okay, fair enough. And the effects aren't that dated. So let's steer back to Milius, though. Shu, you actually did watch the doc, and thank you for that. Impressions about the film?
I thought it was well done. I thought the documentary provided a lot of insight into this guy's background in a number of ways and the impact that he had. And I think there are a number of things out of the documentary that you can take and segment them a little bit and discuss as a result a little bit more in depth along the way. The fact that he was one of, and John, Santo, you're more suited to the terminology probably than I am off the top of my head because I drink way too much aspartame and tend to forget stuff. But the group with Coppola, Spielberg, Lucas, or Scorsese, are they the second generation of, what are they still called, the second generation or the third generation?
They define them as the second generation, which I feel kind of strange about because I would have thought the first generation would have been the silent guys. Second generation would have been second generation would have been like Billy Wilder and Lubitsch and a bunch of above the sound, moving in kind of the sound era. I would even say there would almost be a third generation with John Frankenheimer, Sidney Lumet, the guys that came from live television, and then and then the American New Wave.
What is also in essence the USC group.
Yes, yeah. That new the first college. They were the first college-trained filmmakers in a way. And
it was really interesting because you look at a lot of the names and they have and certainly Milius was wildly successful as well. And you'll find out in the course of the documentary that there are a couple things that really worked against him and ultimately hurt him from a success level, both personally, professionally, decision-making wise, bad breaks, and from a health standpoint, but his impact, and this documentary did a very nice job talking about that, and John, earlier on, you did as well. If you look at his body of work and the stuff that he was involved with and the stuff that he played a role in, when the documentary, which interviews Spielberg, which interviews Coppola, which interviews Scorsese, which interviews George Lucas, they speak with a great appreciation and a definite reverence of his artistic ability while enjoying, even if it occasionally worked against their sensibilities, his caricatured flamboyance from a personality standpoint. And that combination, I think, made him a very interesting character. But the breadth of work, it's a good documentary in that it provides you background on it's very much a could-have-been story. Milius could be much better known than he ultimately was, but there were, some things, his own doing, bad breaks, whatever the circumstance ultimately is, that worked against recognizing him as an icon. Yeah. Even though I think there are people in certain pockets, rightfully so, who will view him in that regard. I think overall, I thought it was very maybe it's easy to do a documentary about a guy who's got as much personality quirks as he ultimately does.
Yeah.
He's bombastic. He's larger than life. But the folks who did it, I think, did a very nice job and provided some very well-rounded and in-depth insight on the character. And in regards to what it is and what it tries to accomplish in the story that it tells, I think it does a very nice job.
Yeah, so also include of that group, Bob Gale, who is the co-writer producer of the Back to the Future movies and has worked a long time with Robert Zemeckis. There were several others that they mentioned and brought up at the time. A few that actually they didn't. One of whose name I can't think of right now is the director of The Black Stallion and Never Cry Wolf, etc. Was also part of that group. Anyway, one of the things of all of them though who talked, the one that really blew me away is George Lucas, because to watch George Lucas, it's like a lot of the time when you watch George Lucas being interviewed about on the Star Wars films and everything else like that, I don't want to say he's cocky, but there's this level of Lucas that is a little more
sanctimonious.
Yeah, sanctimonious, not even standoffish, just like yeah, okay, well, you know what I'm trying to do with the power of myth shtick. But when he's talking about John Milius, it is like a little brother in awe talking about his older brother. It's like, look, It's like, this guy's my fucking hero. I can't, it's like, you have no idea. And there's one story that he tells, which I absolutely adored. So Lucas had finished his short film, THX, 1138.
Great story.
Oh, it's a great bit, and he's like, people will tell you that that this story may be a myth, but I'll tell you it's true because I was there. They weren't going to screen the film because the other students hadn't finished theirs yet, or something like that. And Milius, who had created a character for himself of a warrior, of a big man of honor with a code, and very much a huge Kurosawa fan, which is probably why I'm really attracted to Milius. Right. Has this very kind of masculine code, and demanded that the film be played. And when the professor said no, Milius decked him. And so, according to Lucas, this is a true story. However many of the stories out there, myths about Milius are true or false, this one apparently is quite true. And that's one of those things where you're like, that's so cool that here's a man who believed so passionately in these things that he and his friends were making that he demanded this shit get shown, to the point where he would actually get violent about it. There's another quick little story that Scorsese tells of. He had a 16mm print of Hell's Angels, which was from the 1920s. It was a Howard Hughes movie. The
footage they had from it was so awesome.
Oh, I actually went and rented the movie after seeing the documentary.
It's so great. It's such an amazing piece of work.
The film is crazy stilted, except for like these action scenes, which are just amazing, and these flying sequences that were actually shot with biplanes and everything are just nuts. And so they screen the 16mm print, and the film ends, and Milius apparently stands up in the back and just bellowing out from the back. He's like, "These are the type of films we should be making." And it's just one of those moments where it's like, yeah, okay, that's kind of one of those legendary moments of standing up for what cinema should be. And even Milius himself says that he's not a visual artist. He's not a guy who thinks about shots and composes or anything like that. He's about telling mythic stories and about characters on a grandiose level.
It starts with a brief description of Homer.
Yeah.
How the great, how tales get handed down, and it's the great storytellers that put them into writing, and his background was in the classics, and he talks about wanting to do Conrad for so long and do myth making, and he conceives of himself and he acts at a mythical level.
Yep.
Very, very, whether it's and people constantly describe it, at least in the first 42 minutes, as half being a sham, like a put on, and half being legitimately what he is.
Right.
So he's this person sort of stuck in between,
two personalities, yeah,
and real, and it's just so interesting that he washed out of the army. He was robbed of his war, is what he talks about early on. So he always has a combative nature to him.
Yeah,
it was.
Yeah, he was a man who wanted to die in the war, which in itself is kind of, that in itself is like such an odd mythic statement of.
But he almost, he doesn't, you talk about him not being as popular as he should be. He's almost there.
Yeah.
He was one really crazy Jaws level success of a film away from being at that level.
Yeah. Oh, and speaking of which, of course, which is kind of odd because to some extent he is at that level because of the stuff that he has done that people don't really know about, such as in Jaws, the story about the Indianapolis.
Right.
That was Spielberg needed a scene, and they had just like a small paragraph or something, and for Quint to talk about his war story, and so Spielberg calls up Milius. Milius dictates like, what was it, like a 3-page monologue or something like that?
Dictated 10 pages.
10 pages.
He dictated 10 pages, according to the documentary. He dictated 10 pages over the phone, and Robert Shaw cut it to 5.
5, right. 5
pages of Shaw's conversation, recollection of the story that makes that scene.
Right.
And a lot of it was that Shaw said he couldn't there was just a little bit too much here. They couldn't remember 10 pages. But I found that to be a very interesting conversation about the trust factor and the collaboration factor that is very interesting when you get into conversations about movies and about the art form and how they get made and how they get how they get constructed and where something may have gone right or where something might have gone wrong. And I thought it was interesting that Spielberg calls a guy who he trusts, who really has no role on the film whatsoever, and says, I've got a problem with this scene. I think it's good, but can we talk it through? And they did, and he recognized somebody else's artistic ability. And Milius breaks down this scene and puts together what Spielberg views as being a very important part of the film. And then it takes another step. It takes an actor step there as well from Robert Shaw, who looks at it, understands his character, and pares it down in a way that he thinks it's effective, and the process works.
Yeah,
and when all of those sorts of...
And he pares it down through a mixture of necessity, because he just said he couldn't remember the lines. There's just a pragmatic reason that you can't have that full 10 pages in there. And then what you were saying, the artistic filter of what he knows about his character.
Yeah, and I think I think that's a very interesting process, and it said a lot about, because you also hear, and it's interesting in regards to Milius too. Here's a guy who is, like a lot of creative folks are, they're fiercely protective of what it is that they have created, and they don't want the money end of it. This is classic Hollywood, or classic, literature, creativity anyway. It's art versus commerce. Mm-hmm. They don't want the commerce part of it interfering with what it is they're trying to get across, because they don't believe that commerce understands what's going on. However, there are a number of folks on the artistic end who have enough belief and trust within each other, and we're talking about guys at the top of the Hollywood food chain. We're talking about a guy in Spielberg, and yes, Jaws is relatively early in his career. Okay, but we're talking about a guy in Spielberg who's saying, okay, I know another guy who I think is really good. I'm going to go to him and ask for his advice. And Milius, who's fiercely protective about a lot of his stuff, is willing to talk to Lucas. And Lucas is willing to talk to Milius and talk to Spielberg. There's an interesting dynamic and interesting respect. And in addition, beyond that, when they had an actor who I think they felt comfortable with as well, they would allow them to be a part of the process too. And when it works well, I think it's a very interesting and fascinating approach, and it gives you a little bit of hope that this whole process can actually work from time to time, as opposed to the commerce taking over the art stories that we hear at least as often.
Yeah, I think I actually like that, because you hear about that too with a lot of modern directors, because you'll hear things like, guys like Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez, and Edgar Wright, and Eli Roth. They've all worked on each other's films. They directed scenes here or there because they felt like, well, this guy has a better, eye for doing this. I want it to look a certain way, but I don't have that skill. Like if somebody says, like Edgar Wright thinks I want a violent scene, Quentin Tarantino will come in and help him out. And you hear stories about these guys doing that for each other. I think that you don't hear Michael Bay doing that. These guys.
You don't know. Would you take credit for a scene in a Michael Bay movie?
No, especially
look, I can really bring the crap. I know I can do that. but this scene really needs to be mediocre.
Right. Which is
this scene to underdeliver, and I'm not the guy to do that.
right. But ironically, what has happened on the Transformer films is they had a comedy writing day where they brought in like Patton Oswalt and I believe like Brian Posehn and a bunch of other comics to sit down and go through the script, and they were paid like $100 each or something like that with no credit. And they would sit down at a restaurant with the script, and they would go through and they would start throwing out jokes. And some of them would be incorporated into the script to lighten it up or do whatever they needed to be done.
I think if they were all incorporated, I'd go see the movie.
Yeah,
Every single one.
Yeah, you might have yourself a very much more entertaining movies to some extent on that angle.
I think another thing that I find kind of fascinating about the Milius documentary and the Milius character is the Hollywood paradox. Hollywood has this reputation of being, and certainly of late, has gotten itself embroiled in the political arena. And it's gotten itself embroiled in the political arena in a very, liberal kind of, at least on there are a lot of liberal causes they want to be involved with. However, there's a guy, and this plays a role in how Milius is perceived and how he and some others ultimately believe he was blackballed for an important period of time from the industry. And I think there's a lot to be said about the direction of how we have become way more politically polarized than we need to be, that perhaps is a discussion for another forum. But they're still in the process willing to accept the bombastic nature of what Milius brought to the equation, because they knew ultimately that money spoke to a higher degree, so they could talk all they wanted and try to present themselves as being some sort of enlightened entity, but in reality, in the end, the fact that Milius could make the money spoke volumes.
Yeah, and what she was referring to is Milius. Milius self-proclaims that he was blackballed after Red Dawn, which made a profit, which is odd. But
when you're PG-13 for the first time, then how wouldn't you make a profit?
Yeah, and another little cinematic footnote, historical point, is that Red Dawn was the first PG-13 film ever released theatrically. Anyways, and it took him, and for him, he felt it was his politics that kept him from making more movies. And they do a really interesting thing in the doc where they counterpoint that with Clint Eastwood and Sylvester Stallone. And I'm not sure what Stallone's political leanings are, but as we know, Eastwood is classic conservative.
Right.
Yeah, he's a classic conservative.
Mm-hmm.
But both of them are like, look, man, it doesn't matter what your politics are. If you can make the money, they don't care.
Yeah, it was a very sort of pro-American film, just like I think Clint Eastwood and Sylvester Stallone are, because they both made very jingoistic films in a similar period of time. The Dirty Harry movies were very sort of right-wing in their own way. It was a very fascist view of the police, and not fascist, just an absolutist view of law and order. And
it's also very much a backlash.
Rocky IV is such a blatant piece of American propaganda that it becomes silly. It becomes silly when you're watching it.
Well, the Dirty Harry movies are a backlash, are an answer to and there are a number of other movies from the 70s, and certainly the Bronson Death Wish films fall under this category as well, where there's this Miranda rights, there's this immediate post-Miranda rights era of cinema where where Hollywood is presenting a hard-line, old-style cop who has to go beyond, quote, this has now become cliche and has been for decades, outside of the law to get done what he needs to bring the bad criminal down. Milius with that sort of, played perfectly in with that Dirty Harry character. And the thing is that in the midst of this, Hollywood, which probably from a political standpoint would be all about Miranda rights, was more than willing to crank out a bunch of Dirty Harry type films because they did well at the box office, and folks went and they brought in bank as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I don't think that idea doesn't make a lot of sense to me. in terms of being blackballed for your right-wing politics.
No,
it just doesn't ring true.
Yeah, no. What they ended up saying, as I put my fork down, what they ended up discussing.
What are you sporking? What could you possibly be sporking right now?
Well, no. What it is it's a salad thing, and I was all excited by this. So you buy the salad at Trader Joe's, and it's got the portable spork for some reason, so it can fit in a little canister.
Wow!
Yeah, technology at its finest, right? Welcome to America.
That is maybe the most phenomenal invention I've seen in this entire show.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. Well, you know,
just for the record, just for anyone watching, John was way more excited about Waylon Green than he was about the spork.
Yeah.
The spork is usually the excited I've seen John.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, check out this spork. Hey, I got $10,000 back in taxes. Hey, I got a new car. It's like the same level of excitement, and then there's like Waylon Green level of excitement.
Yeah, I get it. Yes, I was excited to see Waylon Green. But what finally some people say about Milius is that it's he basically his bombastic ways and his attitude about how films should be made and dealing with the executives and stuff like that became too much to deal with. You know, they feel that what they had to put up with was not worth the money that they were actually making. So the $60 million that he made on Red Dawn or however much he made, he was giving them $100 million worth of grief. So had they made more money, it would have been okay. Had he pulled in Michael Bay bucks, everything would be cool.
I wonder if in the end also, whereas Spielberg has done a phenomenal job of transitioning cultural shifts, where you could argue Coppola to some degree maybe has done some of that. Scorsese certainly has done that. Guys from that era, maybe Milius was the right guy at the right time for his style for a while, and then ultimately when that style kind of went out of favor, his ability to reinvent himself wasn't as strong as some of the other guys maybe.
Yeah, I think
did he ever try and reinvent himself?
I was going to say, when the world changed, he sort of dug his heels in and stayed where he was.
That's exactly it.
He never grew up. He never stopped being that punk kid. And
yeah.
Spielberg and Lucas and Coppola, they all grew up around him, and they made more mature pictures. And he's still trying to make the same picture he was making 30 years ago.
Though at the same time, he also made during his era, he tried making his personal film, which was called Big Wednesday, which was basically his story of him and his surfer buddies. It was one of the few narratives out there that legitimately takes surfing seriously. I'm not talking documentary. Yes, I have. Yeah, it's not bad. It's not fantastic. It's a little too long for its own good, but it very much is you can see it. It is his American Graffiti, and the problem being is that where American Graffiti had the comedy and had the soundtrack, this Big Wednesday is a much more serious film that takes some much more darker turns to it, and it's not loaded with Beach Boys or some kind of like surfer kind of soundtrack that a lot of surfers could love today or continue on. So it's got Jan Michael Vincent
and William Catt.
And William Catt, yeah.
And I believe Gary Busey.
Yes. Oh yeah. Oh, it's got the Busey who.
What a trio that is! How is this movie not better known just based on that acting trio in and of itself?
Yeah, it's a very good point. It's a very good point, and the film bombed. The film completely tanked.
No,
unfortunately. I know, shocking.
That's hard to believe.
And then after that, he went back to making Conan. But yeah, Milius is a very kind of singular type of filmmaker, and in his in his later career, of course, he has a heavy part in the HBO series Rome, and when you watch that has a lot of Milius style stuff to it, especially in that first season with the code of the oh god, what was the platoon called or the troop called that the two Roman guards are members of. But there's very much a lot of Milius kind of codes of manhood, and Sam Elliott at the very beginning of the documentary says he doesn't make films for pussies, he makes film for men. This is a man. And that's exactly what he does. And it's like if you look at his stuff that he made for HBO, he made like the Rough Riders. He wanted to write on Deadwood at one point in time, and there's a whole it's a real fascinating story actually behind with him, Milius, and Ed Al Bundy.
Ed O'Neill.
Ed O'Neill, thank you. Ed O'Neill. That's got a really interesting kind of transpiring thing, and the outcome of that story, again, I think really reinforces kind of Milius's own personal code.
Agreed.
But yeah, it's there's a I don't. Are we spoilers, Shu? I mean, is it possible to discuss spoilers in a weird way? Does it matter? I mean,
this is a piece of information that you can find. Since it's a documentary, it's historical knowledge.
Sure. So
there's a piece of information out there that you can find if you read his bio on IMDb or anywhere else online.
So yeah, so in 2010, John Milius suffered from a stroke.
And it was a severe one.
It was a severe stroke, yeah, and he was in the middle of getting ready for his comeback film on Genghis Khan, giant epic on Genghis Khan, and the last 10 to 15 minutes of the film is based around him slowly trying to recover from the stroke, which is the most heartbreaking part of the film, of course, because you see him struggling with trying to communicate again, and Spielberg, discusses how hard it is to see his friend in this position, in this state, but it's at the same time this is a man. And Spielberg points out, if this was any other person other than Milius, there would be no coming back. And John Milius, and just because of this character, because of who he is, and because of what he's his thing, this is a man who you are seeing recover at an incredible rate, and really is struggling and working hard and pushing himself to bring himself back to a place where he can work again. So we will see what happens with John Milius. Let's point out a few other films that he has made, actually, that a lot of people haven't seen or may know about. Big Wednesday, of course, being one of them. His directorial debut is I think it's his best film, with War Notes, bringing it back, Dillinger, which also has Richard Dreyfuss is in it, War Notes, Ben Johnson, it very much a cast of manly men from the 70s, running around with Tommy guns and stuff like that.
Manly man things.
Yeah, it's a fantastic story, and in the doc they mentioned that the film is not romanticized. It is not it is not played up to turn Dillinger into a hero. He's a bad guy who does bad things, but is also a human being, and it's really a remarkable piece of work, and it's a very low budget film made for AIP.
I have seen it, and they compared it in terms of crime drama and its lack of sort of romanticism veneer to Bonnie and Clyde, which I mean, that's one of my favorite films. I would hate to see it. I wouldn't want to put the pressure of being like Bonnie and Clyde on Dillinger before I see it. But
sure.
At the very least, if the veneer of romanticism is ripped away, I'm on board.
Yeah,
I love ripped away veneers.
Yeah, it's a very straightforward film. That's really, I mean, it's a really well-made movie. There are moments of violence in it that are not gory but incredibly visceral, and you feel it. And it's a fantastic film. I'm trying to think. He wrote the script for Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean. Like we mentioned earlier, he has worked on all of the Dirty Harry movies. As a matter of fact, his work on the first film gave him permission to. He directed the second film. Is that correct?
No, he wrote the second one.
He wrote the second one. Okay, so he was officially credited for Magnum Force.
The way they made it sound was he touched up the movie. He wrote the line, "Do you feel lucky, punk?" He got to write the whole script the next time.
Right.
That's pretty much how it sounds like it went down.
Right, and then he was able to come back, and he actually did write the line for not Sudden Impact, or was it Sudden Impact that has My Day? Yeah. He also, like I said, we mentioned earlier, he wrote The Wind and the Lion, which he did with Candice Bergen and Sean Connery, which is also from the 70s. Is that
good either? That was the one that really interests me. That looks like it could be a disaster, or it might be pretty cool.
It's actually pretty solid. It's very much an adventure film of its time. I don't think it is dated as well as some of the other ones. I'll tell you what. It is a notch below The Man Who Would Be King.
Okay. All right. But a notch above Copy?
Yes, there's as far as I know, there's no Greco-Roman wrestling.
On a scale of I Frankenstein.
Right. Right. Okay.
Well, the good news is I have already forgotten the scale.
Yeah. It would at least be 1,000 I Frankensteins.
Okay.
And it's got Brian Keith as Teddy Roosevelt being blustery.
That seems interesting. Yeah.
The moment I saw Teddy, they showed a clip of it, and it was like you see some guy walking from behind, and I swear to God, my first thought was, that dude's walking like Teddy Roosevelt.
Well,
and sure enough, it was Teddy Roosevelt. I don't know what it was about the walk, but there's something about I think our nation, I think we can all say our nation's blusteriest president.
Yes.
Has to be Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Someone with a particularly blustery walk, you just figure he's
I think of all the presidents who were Roosevelts, he's got the best walk.
Well, unless you're talking about the Michael Bay moment, that was pretty. That was pretty powerful.
So,
I'm gonna act out a scene from Michael Bay's Roosevelt. Thank you.
How can you call that shit? That is
Michael Bay's Roosevelt.
Briefly from a sports standpoint, one of the things that I found fascinating is apparently for UFC fans out there, the venue in which they compete is called the Octagon, and the documentary says that Milius was instrumental in creating the concept that is one of the unique components about why that form of mixed martial arts is as effective and popular as it is today.
That's
Milius,
right, yeah.
His tentacles are in any of a number of things.
Yeah,
The first PG-13
anything male.
And the Octagon. And not the Chuck Norris movie, incredibly. That would be 2 points of the Octagon. He'd only have 6 more to go.
Yeah, it just seems like this guy should have a billion-dollar movie under his belt. Like there should be either a Star Wars franchise, like Conan should have been bigger. They should still be making Conan films. Like something of his should have hit.
Right.
Or they should have been making exactly. They should have been making Conan films with which he was involved.
Right.
That they could have franchised out a little bit further. Briefly in the documentary, they kind of brush over that not happening, and I don't know that they were clear as to why, and I don't know the backstory there either.
Yeah, I think part of it probably has to do with Milius showing up at meetings carrying a sidearm.
Right. Eventually, you just don't want to deal with that crap.
Yeah. I mean, if you're it's just a movie. If you're worried about getting shot while trying to get a Conan movie off the ground, then
there's a lot more kids coming out of film school these days, buddy.
Yeah, but there was a King Conan, I believe, was that they were working on a while back that I think was based off either a story that he did or a script that he had done. Oh, and of course, Conan was written by Oliver Stone.
Right.
The original one. And Milius did some reworking on that one as well. But I know that. Arnold is getting ready to make.
It's funny, that line from Conan of "What's best in life."
Yeah.
It's a paraphrasing of a motto that Genghis Khan used. So it's essentially a Genghis Khan nugget of wisdom.
Yeah, I think probably if there's anybody out there in the film world who has studied military tacticians and kind of that history of the military world, Milius seems to have been that guy who did it.
Right.
I mean, he's big on the Roman Empire and Genghis Khan, and just throughout history. Even like when he's talking about, he's referencing stuff in interviews from different warriors and different tribes throughout history of time. You're like, okay, this guy's got a niche.
That kind of movie?
Speculation time.
Sorry, yeah.
Speculation time. What role did John Milius play in the script for Patton?
Oh, let's see. I know that the script was written by Coppola.
I'm sure much of it was.
So was there? Oh, so let me guess. The opening speech was written by Milius.
I don't know for sure. I'm just guessing.
I'm sorry. I thought you actually had a fact there. I was very curious.
No. That's why I said speculation time. I made it very clear.
My bad. That's what speculation means.
Yes, it was an early script. So one of the reasons that, you go back to that trust issue, one of the reasons that John Milius could pick up the phone, or Steven Spielberg could pick up the phone to John Milius and say, hey, write me 10 pages, and I trust it, even though possibly even at that point in their careers and their lives, were the two to cold meet, they may not have gotten along. They had their college days behind it. So he not only had undeniable talent, No one is saying that. But he also had a cadre of people who implicitly trusted him, with whom he had this, I believe they use the term esprit de corps, which is always very pretentious.
Yes, that it is.
He really believed in the esprit de corps. That sort of brought him along, but that only takes you so far. But what we saw was early on they collaborated a great deal, helping one another out. So I'm wondering if while Francis Ford Coppola was working on the script for Patton about this bombastic military leader, he called the only guy he may know who owns a gun and asked him who are some of the great military leaders? What are some speeches? And if not that part, I'm thinking of some of the other awesome parts in Patton, like his whole concept of being reborn and his poetry and some of those, some of those more warrior poet elements of the character.
The Rommel, you magnificent bastard, I read your book.
Not that. I'm thinking of the I Was There poem.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I was there 1,000 years ago. I was here. I was there. Blah blah. Yeah.
I think about those weird moments in Patton that are so good and so evocative of a certain kind of character.
Sure.
Well,
yeah.
He was young, but Milius was that character.
He doesn't like esprit de corps, but he's more than happy to use the word evocative.
Yeah.
I like esprit de corps. I just heard it. That's why I want to use it again.
Yeah, I would say there's actually on YouTube, if you look for it, there is, I believe it's like close to an hour-long interview of John Milius conducted by Francis Ford Coppola. And there's a lot of Apocalypse Now discussion in there. But I can't remember if they talk about Patton at all, or their friendship, or calling each other for help. Yeah. Something like that may be in there. So I'd be kind of curious to go back, rewatch that, and see if there actually was some chatting going on between Coppola and Milius on that script.
All right.
So really quick, I'll tell you before we wrap up. Let's go with favorite Milius films. So let's start with you, Dub.
Is it written or directed?
Either or. I would say whatever film you feel best suits what you would recommend to see as from the Milius canon oeuvre, no matter what it be.
I think we all know it's impossible to pick a favorite movie in general. When people ask you what your favorite movie is, it's just an impossible question.
So, then how about we just go, what would be the...
Let me finish up here. So the answer I always give to just move the conversation forward is Apocalypse Now. I think it's one of the most easily defendable films as a favorite movie. That would, as my go-to favorite movie answer, I would have to say my favorite John Milius movie is Apocalypse Now.
Fair enough. Shoo.
Dillinger's a good code movie. Apocalypse Now, as Dub mentioned, is a good code movie. Conan, I think, is just pure enjoyment and entertainment. So those would be ones that I would go with. But based on the documentary, there are a couple other things out there that I wouldn't mind checking out either. Big Wednesday actually fascinates me a little bit.
Yeah. So, Warren?
Apocalypse Now.
Apocalypse Now.
It's just a great movie. Like Dub said, nobody can argue with you. It's sort of
Yeah, although I guess they could argue a little bit about the Redux, but that's
Did you not like the Redux?
The Redux is weird for me. It's like the however fascinating the plantation scene is, the French plantation scene is.
Right.
It's a grinding halt in that movie.
And you can understand why it isn't there, and why there's a scene earlier that doesn't quite make all that much sense, where there's a character or two who's in one scene and then just completely disappears as a result of that. I enjoyed that. I thought the plantation. I completely understand what you're saying, but found it very fascinating, informative, and enjoyed it at the same time.
Yeah,
I'm glad I saw it, but I completely understand why it isn't in the more familiar version.
Yeah, it's and of course for myself, I have to go with. However much I think Dillinger's his best film, I think Conan is the most rewatchable. It is the most cinematic because it has the least amount of dialogue. It has a great score by Basil Poledouris, which it's just Basil Poledouris who did several of Milius's films, who also was part of that USC crowd, I believe. He started off as a filmmaker and then became a composer. But the Conan score is just mind-blowingly good, and it shows off what is best in Schwarzenegger in an odd way. And so yeah, and it's got, I mean, the scene with the giant snake and the robbery scene.
You're picking Conan over Apocalypse Now.
For a John Milius movie, yes. I think that because
Apocalypse Now is a John Milius movie.
Well, I would say though that I know from Hearts of Darkness though I would say that I think Coppola also did a lot of rewriting and created the ending for the film, and I think he added a lot to that film, so it's not as pure of a Milius film as.
So you're giving Apocalypse Now less Milius points in general, and basing your choice on like the total number of Milius points plus.
God, it's a trap. It's a trap.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I would have to say yeah. I think probably like on the amount of Milius scale, I think Conan gives you more of what Milius stands for and what Milius is about and how Milius looks at the world versus the Milius scale on Apocalypse Now, which still retains a lot of that, especially I think in Kurtz. But there's
most of the characters. Chef, I don't know why. Chef always makes me think of Milius.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And I think
that guy.
Also, if I remember correctly, I believe somebody else wrote the narration. I can't remember how much of the narration Milius wrote. I don't remember if because I know he was there in the room.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much of it. And and he has that great bit where there's a great little story in there with Martin Sheen's trying to do the narration. It's just not coming out right. So Milius takes his 45 and puts it in Martin Sheen's hands, and Martin Sheen, complete pacifist, freaked out by guns in all way, shape, or form, and Milius puts the gun in his hand and says, "Say the lines," or whatever his crazy moment of masculinity is there.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I'll tell you what. Now that, and Conan is one that I can easily Apocalypse Now. I feel you got to be in the mood for. Apocalypse Now is a much kind of heavier film than that. It's not one of those of, hey, I'm just going to throw this on.
I threw it on the other day, and I got maybe 90 seconds into it, and I was like, oh, fuck, right, to this.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. Whereas,
I don't have a problem watching it. I enjoy watching it just I could throw it. I used to throw it on, in college and stuff. I had the video.
Sure, in college.
Yeah, well, now I barely have time to watch anything now, so it's
Would you throw it on in front of your kids?
No, but I wouldn't throw Conan on either.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
There's a million things. That is not the measuring stick for a movie.
Is there any work by John Milius
that is kid friendly
for people under 13? Is 13 the low point for any?
Here's the funny thing is I don't even know if 13 is good enough. Even though Red Dawn is PG-13, I don't even know if that's right for a 13-year-old. Maybe in the 80s it was.
Oh yeah.
If you're a 13-year-old that watched your parents die in the war.
Yeah. Avenge me, son!
Movie, buddy.
Avenge me!
I don't know if, to some extent, I don't even know if Red Dawn would be proper for a 13-year-old today. They're so sensitive.
Arya Stark could watch it.
You know what?
Oh, yeah.
Toughen the damn 13-year-olds up a little bit by making them watch Red Dawn.
Yeah.
Show them what a real 13 movie is.
Just to toughen up our kids. When we leave here, I'm going to go punch both my kids in their sleep. Wake them up that way in the middle of the night. Use the line I got from Mad Men. Just be like, boom, that's for nothing, so watch out.
I'm gonna go put my 45 in their hand.
That's right.
To eat your breakfast.
Really, now do your math homework.
Do your homework.
I know Apocalypse Now should be the go-to, but I would want to say go for Dillinger, but for
you know
pure
what?
pleasure enjoyment,
Conan is the easiest movie to watch at any given time.
Yeah, agreed. And I would love to know why he wasn't involved in the wretched fucking sequel that was Conan the Destroyer.
That was a horrible movie.
Oh my god! And it was funny because that was one back when I was a kid. I'd seen Conan the Barbarian, and that got me into the Robert E. Howard books, and so I was reading all the books when Conan the Destroyer came out, and so of course I just loved fucking Conan the Destroyer because it was just more Conan.
Oh, I thought maybe you saw Conan the Destroyer and you decided to burn all the books.
All my books, yeah. No, it's and then I think I saw it on cable soon after it came out on video or at HBO, and I was like, oh shit, that's what this movie is, huh?
Yeah, I don't think I saw it in the theater.
Yeah, no, that was one of those fun. That's one of those fun divorced kids Dad takes you to see whatever you want to see, so I was able to see Conan. Just
Not in with babysitters.
divorce has its pluses, trust me. So John Milius, if you don't know his work, look him up, watch some of his stuff. Definitely check out the documentary on Netflix.
Yeah.
It's well worth the watch. It's only 90 minutes, I believe, or 100 minutes. So
I will say this about every John Milius film I have ever seen: I did not regret watching it.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I don't think there's a single John Milius film that you will sit there and go, well, that was a fucking waste of time.
Yeah, there are varying degrees of good.
Yeah. So, Dub, where can people find you?
At Film Geek Dub, I'm hoping to tweet more than once every couple of days.
You just make it special.
I do. I want it to mean something.
Yeah,
I want it to matter.
In social media, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Instead, it's very, very nihilistic.
Yeah.
It's the hollow existence we always.
I like making an event out of nothing.
Right. No, I believe I tweeted a picture of Waylon and William.
You did. Mine. I zoomed in with my iPhone to take mine, so it's nothing but like they look like 8-bit pixel dudes from Pitfall or something.
Did you see what we did? I don't even know if you noticed this, how cartoonish it would have been to anybody watching, but I pulled out my phone and took a picture. And then you pulled out your phone and took a picture, and I'm watching you, and I go, oh, I can zoom on my phone. You put your phone away. I took my phone out, I zoomed in, I took a picture. I put my phone away. You saw what I did. You took your phone out, you zoomed in, you took a picture, only your light adjusted. And I went, oh, crap, my light can adjust on the phone, too. I pulled out my phone, zoomed in, and then I was trying to adjust the light, and it kept readjusting, and I ended up with, like, I'm playing this game where I'm adjusting the light. I can see them both perfectly. It's very well lit, and then just before I hit the button, it gets blown out.
Right.
I'm playing my game with this phone, and I eventually take enough pictures, and I put it away, and I realized what just happened, and I kind of started giggling, and I'm glad you didn't notice, because that might have been one of those moments where we looked at each other and started laughing.
No, I'll tell you why, because I was looking at the guy next to us who had his, like, Nikon.
Yes, I got it.
I didn't have my fucking real camera with me. I was really upset at that moment. And of course, and all I'm doing is going, God, I hope this turns out. I'm like zooming in, making sure I get the light proper, snap the photo, and I get home. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna tweet this, and then I look, and it's like 2 little Pitfall dudes standing.
Yeah, I've got several of those Pitfall pictures.
Oh God, yeah. So thanks iPhone, but you know, you got a little bit of work to do because you know I don't use you as a fucking phone. So okay, Shu, where can we find you at?
I don't flippin' know. Shuniverse is good, I guess. SEHU. Universe.
Oh, I get that. That's pretty good. Clever.
Does anyone ever pronounce it Shachuniverse?
No, all the time. But they only do it on social media, so it really doesn't matter that much.
Yeah, because they're typing it out, so to them.
You're the guy from Shachuniverse.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Warren, where can people find you?
At Warren Graff.
Yeah!
Yeah, all right.
Pretty straightforward.
That's the most clever of the bunch.
Much like some of Milius' lines, just straight and to the point.
Well, I was thinking about the other day. I was like, I got my actual name on Twitter, which a lot of people don't have. Like, 'cause I joined a long time ago.
Yeah.
All the other Warren Graffs.
Yeah, that was one of those where I joined like the third week that I'd heard about it, and there was only like 5,000 people on there, and I was just all I was seeing was Leo Laporte twit day after day. I stopped for like years, and then when I realized. Yeah, when I realized actually that me having my own name actually had some level of real estate, I was like, okay, let's stick with this.
Yeah, I got my name.
And you can.
New X-Men trailer come out?
Did what?
Did a new X-Men trailer come out?
No, there was a piece of footage from the MTV Movie Awards or something like that.
It was the opening minute.
Got it. All right.
I will say quickly in the documentary.
Yeah.
Bryan Singer should have been cut from it.
Because all it seems like he's doing is name dropping.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the world we live in. We live
Take
in
that,
a
Bryan Singer.
So where can we find you, Santo?
We can find me at my name as well, at John Santo. And next week we will be bringing you a spotlight of another filmmaker, William Friedkin, who's not gotten any mention on the past 2 or 3 shows here for some reason.
I don't believe we'll actually talk about him because pretty much for like 6 or 7 weeks it's like next week.
I know. Yeah, it's kind of sad, and the worst part is next week we'll have nothing to say.
Right, we're sad at all. Really?
We pretty much chatted it all out. So anyways, folks, all right, thank you for joining us or watching the show, and to the 14 people who checked it out last week.
14?
Thank you. Yeah, pretty crazy, right?
Oh my God.
Yeah, we're growing, man. We're growing. Anyways, thank you all very much for joining us. We will be back next week to discuss William Friedkin, Film Geek Primer live.
William Friedkin movies.
One more time.
In the meantime, see William Friedkin movies.
Yes. Oh, I hear our theme.
No countdown.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.